Can you imagine a world where, in order to simply find a place to live, you have to visit a local government facility, apply for assistance, and wait 6 months to a year to see if you get accepted, only to find that all the current federally subsidized housing is already being rented? Now imagine you're an unemployed single parent trying to keep your kids fed and in school while trying to maintain a job search and to try and support all of that. This may sound foreign to you, but this is a day-to-day reality for approximately 4 million Americans nationwide, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. According to the Bureau's report on poverty, 12.3% of the population, or 1 in 8 Americans, are considered impoverished. On top of this, according to the Eviction Lab, an eviction rate monitoring service conducted by Princeton University, roughly one eviction was filed for every 17 renter households between 2000 and 2016. That correlates to nearly 1 million evictions per year. Without a place to live, or without suitable and sustainable accommodations, Americans all over the country are being forced to live in halfway homes, out of cars, and in houses unfit for human habitation. As a result, they're being forced to move from place to place depending on the availability and influx of money and are unable to establish themselves in order to invest in their futures as well as the health and well-being of their communities. To illustrate this point, imagine you're the head of a household facing eviction. You know that you're not going to be able to afford the next month's rent, but recognize that your family is going to need new clothes and food during that time. If you know you're going to be evicted regardless, do you think you'd pay what you could to your landlord and forego clothing and food for your family? Would you ask a friend or a family member to loan you money? And if so, do you think you'd be able to pay them back? Often what individuals do in this situation is accept the eviction, knowing that if they're lucky, they'll find a place to stay, like a halfway home or some impermanent residence with a friend or someone willing to take what little you can offer to help them afford their own rent. Because of this, housing insecurity can become a chronic issue as the government support tends to treat the symptoms rather than the root of the problem. As it stands, the U.S. and local governments provide some federally funded housing assistance through programs like the Federal Housing Choice Voucher Program and local variants on this program. However, these programs do not address needs like the current limited availability of subsidized housing, the extensive processing time for assistance to come through, and they often suffer from mismanagement of resources, which disproportionately benefit high-income rather than low-income households. They are also almost completely inaccessible to anyone with a criminal record. As a result, many people in the most desperate situations are being overlooked because they are not viewed as ideal candidates. Similar to single mothers who are willing to accept an eviction record in order to provide short-term support to their families, many men in impoverished communities are willing and encouraged to risk incarceration to reap the short-term rewards of criminal activities such as drug dealing and theft. As a result, another cyclical pattern is created where men in desperate situations are branded a scarlet letter banning them from ever seeing the benefits of public housing assistance programs. What I propose is an alternative with looser restrictions on the accessibility of these previously established programs, as well as further economic support for affordable housing programs in more communities across the country. How I envision the implementation of this is a sweeping reform of current federal housing policy with an emphasis on community development rather than short-term housing options. Utilizing federal subsidies, I would advocate for furthering the availability of permanent housing for low-income households and individuals regardless of their criminal history, as well as encouragement programs for these individuals to pursue education for themselves and their families. The disadvantages of this would be the inherent cost of taxpayer dollars in the short term with no certain guarantee of long-term payoff. However, the advantages of this would mean the security of a place to live for our most desperate members of the population, allowing them the opportunity to pursue more healthy and productive lifestyles with the guarantee of a place to come home to at the end of the day. As a result, I encourage all of you to write letters to your senators Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, as well as your state and local representatives, encouraging them to focus their policy decisions around affordable housing. Additionally, you can consider donating to or volunteering with institutions like the Center on Budget Policy Priorities, which emphasize community education and policy decisions that support housing reform in favor of low-income families. Because at the end of the day, what is a civilization without strong and healthy, thriving communities? Cultural sensitivity is integral to this social issue presentation, given that it focuses heavily on groups that are often misportrayed and underportrayed in mass media. My topic is focused on affordable housing for persons who are unemployed or otherwise incapable of affording the cost of living for their families. Because this issue brings to questions matters of pride, independence, and fairness, it's incredibly important to think about the issues not only from the societal standpoint, but also from that of the individual. Additionally, there's a cultural phenomenon in which we tend to judge a person's character based upon one or two actions in their past, rather than looking at the motivations for those actions and how they've grown and responded to them. For example, many men growing up in low-income neighborhoods turn to drug activity and crime as a means of making money. While that may seem distasteful to someone who's never experienced this culture, it is perfectly normal for someone growing up within it, especially given the difficulty and competition surrounding access to similarly paying traditional market jobs. As a result of this societal tendency to judge based on a person's criminal record, however, it becomes very difficult for individuals to break out of these cycles, which deny them the support they so desperately need. If we're going to solve the housing crisis, we need to look inward and ask ourselves how we'd wish to be treated were we in a similar situation.